He's inside my son. Me son began speaking with my dead grandfather's voice and sharing secrets only he could know. This is the story of what happened next. The final thing my grandfather said was a quiet promise. Now my 4-year-old just repeated it to me word for word. My son, Leo, just stared right through me and said, "This isn't goodbye, champ." It wasn't his voice. It was the same strained whisper my grandpa used on his deathbed. It was the same pet name no one else ever called me. Leo has been a perfectly normal kid his entire life, but that changed 4 days ago. He woke up different. He speaks like a man who has seen decades, and he walks with the same slight limp my grandfather developed after his service in Korea. Yesterday, I found him in the garage trying to light an old tobacco pipe he'd discovered. My grandfather passed away 6 months ago, uttering those precise words to me in his sterile hospital room. I'm in Leo's room now, watching him sleep. Downstairs, my wife Sarah is probably on the phone with her sister, convinced I'm having a breakdown. She heard what Leo said, and her first reaction was to ask if mental instability ran in my family. But there's something she doesn't know. This morning I discovered Leo in our walk-in closet, clutching my grandfather's purple heart. We had stored that medal in a sealed box on the highest shelf. A 4-year-old couldn't have possibly reached it. When I questioned him, he looked at me with weary, ancient eyes and said he had to make sure it was still there. He mumbled something about the Viet Cong trying to find it. My grandpa was in the Korean War, not Vietnam. How could Leo even know about that? The strangeness began precisely 1 week following my grandfather's memorial. Leo woke up shouting about a man named Sal Moretti. It wasn't a nightmare. It was the enraged yelling of a man in a heated dispute. Sarah found him on his bed, finger pointing at an empty corner, screaming that Sal still owed him money from a card game in 1961. I had never spoken of Sal Moretti to Leo. He was my grandfather's old army buddy who passed 50 years ago. My grandfather would often joke about that debt. But how did Leo know? Sarah suggested he overheard relatives talking, but Leo wasn't at the memorial. The following morning, Leo demanded black coffee. Not juice or milk. He said it with a cranky impatience, as if we were foolish. Sarah chuckled and poured him some juice. Leo took a sip, grimaced, and declared, "This isn't a real drink. It's sweet garbage." That phrase, sweet garbage, it was my grandfather's exact term for anything sugary. I started documenting everything. On Wednesday, he complained of pain in his thigh, pointing to the very spot my grandfather carried shrapnel. On Friday, his preschool teacher called us in. She showed us a drawing of a house, done with incredible precision. She said Leo had worked on it for over an hour, insisting he had to draw it perfectly because it was his home, and he missed it. The address scrawled at the top made my blood run cold. 314 Elm Street, my grandfather's house which we'd just sold. Leo had only been there a handful of times. Yet his drawing included details only a resident would know. The separate basement entrance, even an old oak tree that was cut down years ago. Sarah immediately booked a consultation with a child psychologist. Dr. Eris Thorne suggested Leo was processing loss through imaginative play. Children this age struggle to grasp the permanence of death, he said. But that's the thing. Leo never knew his great-grandfather. The old man was in a memory care facility for 2 years, his mind ravaged by Alzheimer's. Leo had no memories of him to process. When I explained this, Dr. Thorne fell silent and asked us to bring Leo in for a direct assessment. That night, I found Leo in the kitchen at 2 a.m. He was just sitting at the table in complete darkness, perfectly still. When I flipped on the light, he didn't even flinch. "What are you doing up, buddy?" I asked. "Remembering the jungle," he replied. The sorrow in his voice made me want to shake him until my son returned. I carried him to bed, and as I tucked him in, he grabbed my arm. His small hand felt icy cold. "I've missed you, champ," he whispered. "Missed you terribly." It was my grandfather's voice. Not similar, not an imitation, it was exact. I snatched my hand back as if burned and quickly left the room. Sarah found me on the couch at 3 a.m. She asked what was wrong, but how do you tell your wife you think your son is haunted? The next day, Leo was completely himself again. But the strange peace didn't last. Sarah's mother came to babysit. When we returned, she was pale and trembling. "He knows about my miscarriage," she said in a hushed voice. Sarah froze. What miscarriage? The one before you were born. The boy I lost. I never told a soul except your father and my mother, both long gone. She grabbed her purse. There's something deeply wrong with that child. She left before we could say a word. We found Leo building a tower with blocks. Sarah knelt beside him. Leo, what did you tell Grandma? He didn't look up. I told her I met baby Michael, he said. He's with me now. He said she doesn't need to be sad anymore. Baby Michael. That was the name her mother had chosen. Sarah began to cry with pure, unadulterated terror. I called Dr. Thorne, who told us to bring him in immediately. We drove in silence. Leo hummed an old big band tune. When I asked what it was, he said it was the song from his wedding. Your wedding? I asked. Yep, married my Louise at St. Jude's in '55. Louise was my grandmother's name. St. Jude's was their church. He'd never heard these stories. Dr. Thorne met us, and Leo sat in an armchair like a miniature adult. The doctor asked him to draw his family. Leo drew 4 figures, 2 adults, a child, and an old man standing apart. That's Mommy, Daddy, me, and me, he said, pointing to each one. Dr. Thorne asked if he understood death. Of course, Leo said. It's when your body is done, but you aren't. You just go to another place and wait. Wait for what? To return. He asked Leo if he recalled being someone else. Leo nodded. He said his name was Arthur Fleming, my grandfather's name, and that he had died 6 months ago but couldn't move on. Dr. Thorne looked at me, his professional mask slipping. He asked to speak with us privately. This doesn't align with any known psychological condition, he began. Imagination doesn't produce verifiable information about the dead. He hesitated. Like what? Sarah's voice was sharp. Like possession or reincarnation. Phenomena outside my professional domain. He gave us referrals, a neurologist, a psychiatrist, and the number of a paranormal investigator. We saw a series of specialists. A neurologist ran an MRI, an EEG, and extensive blood work, searching for tumors or seizures. A psychiatrist spent hours with Leo. The conclusion was always the same. Leo was physically and psychologically healthy. There was no conventional explanation for his condition. They were baffled, leaving us with no answers and a growing sense of dread. That night, I called the paranormal researcher, Professor Elena Vance. She agreed to an off-the-record meeting. She came to our house and spoke with Leo alone. An hour later, she came down looking deeply concerned. What your son is demonstrating is consistent with documented accounts of past life memories, she said. But this is different. The onset was abrupt, and the prior personality is a direct relative. She explained this was more akin to a walk-in, where a soul enters an already inhabited body to attend to unfinished business. She looked at me intently. Did your grandfather have unfinished business? I thought back to his last day. He'd had a moment of lucidity, gripped my hand and said he wasn't finished yet, that he had to see me become the man I was meant to be. I had dismissed it as confusion. What if he meant it literally? That night, Leo woke up screaming about the bitter cold and watching comrades die in the Korean War. When he calmed, he looked at me with those ancient eyes. Sorry, champ. It just gets overwhelming sometimes. Remembering. The next morning, I found a box of my grandfather's old war letters. They described the exact horrors Leo had screamed about. I showed him a passage about a soldier who died saving my grandfather. Frank was a hero, Leo said instantly without reading. Took a blast meant for me. That's why I'm here. Too many things left unsaid. My hands were shaking. Sarah was standing in the doorway. This is impossible, she whispered. Professor Vance returned and interviewed Leo for 4 hours. He answered hundreds of questions about my grandfather's life with impossible accuracy. She asked him why he was in Leo's body. Because I wasn't ready to leave him, he said in that tired old voice. Still have to teach him how to be a good man. His wisdom was a gift, but it carried a price. Professor Vance asked if Leo was still there. His entire demeanor shifted, and my son returned. Grandpa's here, he said in his normal voice. He's nice. He tells me stories. I was frozen. My son and my grandfather, cohabiting the same body, both conscious. Over the next few weeks, we tried to adapt. Some days Leo was just Leo, On other days, my grandfather was more prominent. Sarah had a much harder time. She just wanted her son back, not this strange hybrid. Our marriage began to fracture under the pressure. She started researching exorcisms. He's not a demon, I argued. He's my grandfather. He's something using our son's body, she fired back. We fought, saying things we could never take back. The next morning, Leo was violently ill with a fever of 104. We rushed him to the ER. The doctors found nothing. No infection, no virus. But he was deteriorating, slipping in and out of consciousness. They admitted him to the ICU. Sarah and I sat by his bedside in silence. Around midnight, Leo's eyes opened. He looked at me with perfect clarity. "It's time," he said in my grandfather's voice. "I can't hold on any longer. This body is rejecting me." I grabbed his tiny hand. "What's happening?" "I came back because I wasn't done, but I'm making him sick. 2 souls in 1 body. It isn't natural." Tears were streaming down my face. "So what happens now?" "I go back. I let him be himself again. But I need you to know, you're going to be a great man. I'm so proud of you, champ." They were the same words he had whispered before he died. I finally understood. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Scared to lose you again. You never lost me. I'm always with you, just not like this." He looked at Sarah. "Take care of them." He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, it was just Leo. He looked weak, but he was himself. His fever broke within the hour. By morning, he was asking for toast. The doctors were dumbfounded. At home, I watched Leo for any sign of my grandfather. There was nothing. He seemed to have forgotten everything about being Arthur Fleming. Professor Vance came by one last time. She confirmed his memory of the event was gone. Sarah and I started to rebuild. We stopped talking about what had happened, just trying to find our way back to normal, but I kept noticing little things. Leo's drawings would suddenly include details from my grandfather's past. When I taught him to ride a bike, he learned with impossible speed, saying his body just knew how. Then, we were cleaning the attic, and Leo picked up a photo I'd never seen, my grandfather as a young man next to a car. Leo stared at it. Then he said, "That's a '49 Ford Custom. Bought it with my army pay." I flipped over the photo. In my grandmother's handwriting, it read, "Arthur and his Ford, 1949. Sarah saw my face and went pale. "It's starting again," she whispered. But it wasn't, not like before. These were just fragments, echoes left behind. Professor Vance called that night with a new theory. The fever wasn't rejection, it was integration. She explained that under extreme stress, 2 souls can merge into a single consciousness containing memories from both lives. My grandfather hadn't left. He had dissolved into Leo. "So he's still there?" I asked. "In a sense," she said. "But not as a distinct personality. It's more like a data transfer. His consciousness isn't in him anymore. It has become a part of him." My son, carrying my grandfather's memories, walking through life with 70 years of experiences that were not his own. The signs continued. My Aunt Clara, my grandfather's sister, came to visit. Leo walked up to her and said, "You still owe me from that last gin rummy game, Clarabelle," she gasped. "Artie?" she whispered. No one had called him that in decades. Leo gave her a smile that was not a child's smile. "Told you I'd see you again," he said. Then he blinked and he was just Leo again. Love had found a way to persist beyond death. Sarah and I started marriage counseling. We learned to support each other through the profound uncertainty. Because Leo wasn't cured. He was simply different now, forever an old soul. His kindergarten teacher told us he was reading at a 3rd grade level, yet he sat alone at recess, watching the clouds. Leo turned 6. He blew out his candles. Later, I asked his wish. "That Grandpa knows I'm okay," he said. That night, I watched him sleep. Inside that small boy lived a love that had transcended death. Sarah stood beside me and took my hand. "He's going to be okay," she whispered. "We all are." The next morning, Leo came down for breakfast. He looked at me with that knowing, ancient expression. "I love you, champ," he said in my grandfather's voice. Then he blinked and he was just Leo again. I pulled him into a hug. "Love you too, Dad," he said in his own voice. In that moment, I understood. This was our life. My son, my grandfather, intertwined. It wasn't normal, but it was ours. As he went upstairs, I heard him humming an old big band song, my grandfather's favorite. Sarah looked at me. We both knew. "He's still there," she said softly. "Part of him always will be," I replied. And finally, that was okay. If you're still with me now, you're part of our journey. If this story moved you, please show some support with a like and subscribe to Winds of Thought so you don't miss what's next.